Hey there! In today's episode, we're going to be talking about confidence. Where does it come from? How do you get more of it? And how can it impact and influence your life and help you build the life of your dreams?
Yeah, so it's something that I have struggled with, and maybe some of you have too. So let's talk about it. And we invite you to pull up a chair and have a conversation with us at the well.
See you there. Hey there, and welcome back to Conversations at the Well. We have our amazing host.
I'm Desireé Brown.
And I am Man Candy of the Month, her arm piece. I try to make every picture with her look even better. My name is Vernon Brown.
Yeah, he is pretty handsome, though. I married him for his looks. And his brain.
I was about to say, give me my credit now. Give me my credit. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about confidence. And confidence is something that I don't want to say we're on the opposite sides of the spectrum of, but we kind of have had a different experience in how you get it, how you use it, and how you protect it in a lot of different cases. Would you agree?
I definitely would, because I think that for you, in most of your situations, you present yourself quite confidently.
I love the way you said that because it's all about presentation. For me, there's a huge difference in what it looks like versus what's going on in my head. But continue, I cut you off.
No, that's what I wanted to say. So I think that you have I call it the gift of gab. You are good at like showing up and like kind of being who you are needing to be on that particular platform. And I think for me, and probably a lot of people who watch, maybe, or some people, at least some people who watch, kind of like, like, I don't know who am I supposed to be right now. I know, but not because we don't have the skills and not because we don't have what we need in order to do the assignment or the whatever we are trying to do. But I don't know. Sometimes I think some of those self-doubt things roll around in the head, tell you that, oh, you're not prepared, or you're not this, or you're not that. And it can show in the demeanor that you present in whatever platform you're on.
So what I would propose, because I think there's a number of different things that we're going to talk about here today. And probably it's going to be more complicated because you're dealing with crazy me versus simple you. But I think we need to talk about what you're required to be in the moment. Right? What's happening in your head. So the authenticity of who you are in the moment. And then also who you were created or born to be. And the reason why I have those three there is because I may present myself as super confident in a particular motive. And we know that's different than what's going on in my head. But also that confident, quote unquote, person that has that persona is quite a ways different than who I've been created to be. And so I think part of our discussion or part of the pursuit of what we're trying to do here is recognize, yes, there's a gap between who you are in this moment and who you want to be. But how does that contrast, or how does that compare to who you've been created to be? And should we spend more time getting from where we are to this fictitious person who we think we need to be? Or maybe we need to turn our alignment to where we were created to be. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great approach. So I'm ready to get into it. So, expand on that a bit more.
So let me tell you how I came to that. So for example, let's take an area of life. What area of life do you want to talk about? Area of my life, if you will.
Your life? Let's talk about work.
So work. Actually, that's a great one. So we'll talk about work. In my day job.
What you mean, actually?
Not actually, like
actually, that's a really. She only comes up with them every once in a while.
She already used up her one good idea quote in this month. No, but so in work, my job is to meet with customers, and they have IT technical problems, and it's my job to look at everything that we can do and try to propose a solution to them. Now, I've only been at this job for about a little over a year now. And it's a huge company. There's so much to learn. There's so much that I don't know. And so a lot of times I'm in front of customers telling them about products I understand, but then also when it comes to the nuances and the details around it, some of those things may be fuzzy. And so in that instance, I, in my mind, know exactly what I don't know and know what I do know, but I also know what the moment requires in order for me to provide and instill confidence in someone else that they want to spend a couple $1 million with my company. And so through that lens, it's about rising to the moment in that instance. And how I do it personally, my confidence comes from, one, understanding. I'm trying to figure out how to say this well, but my confidence comes from, one, understanding that in most cases, no one in the room knows more about what I'm talking about than me. And not to say that I'm better or smarter than anyone. Most of the time I'm in there by myself. So that's kind of by virtue, you're a customer, you don't really know what we can do. So no one can really contradict what I'm saying. I kind of know where I can get in trouble and I know where I can't. So I'm, it doesn't take a lot to be confident when you believe and you know that no one else is going to contradict you because no one else knows what you're talking about. But I do think that some people lose sight of that in those instances. So let's say if you were hired to do a speech on a particular topic. If you were doing a speech to a group of people who had nothing or had no knowledge of what you were talking about, maybe you were talking about what we do here at the Well, you may be nervous, but I would say, well, why are you nervous? No one can tell you that you're wrong about your business, right?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, you
so then why would you be nervous?
Well, because I'm telling myself, you don't know that real well.
And that's the voice inside of your head. So on this side of the table, we have a very loud voice inside of your head. On this side of the table, it's probably just as loud. And I'm like, shut up, stupid. I don't need you right now. Be quiet. And I'm drowning out that voice with logic saying, well, I know more about it than any of these other people. Now, where that gets interesting is what happens when I'm in a meeting with my boss. Then things get a little bit different. And for me, that voice gets louder. Where I almost find myself taking a back seat and pretty much offering no feedback or no input because I'm almost not subservient, but I'm almost like sub to her in that instance, allowing her to take that approach. So I guess what I want you to gather or understand is that what you present doesn't mean what's quietly inside of your head doesn't exist. It just means that you figured out ways to silence or combat that voice within your own head.
So that's interesting because I've been through like talk therapy, right? So I've had a therapist in in the past. I don't currently know that. I thought you've known that. I haven't been like silent about it.
Like while we were married or?
Some, yeah.
Okay. I know about the people at work, but anyways, keep going.
Yeah, the like EAP.
Okay, gotcha.
Like that, but then
I thought you meant like sitting on a chaise lounge somewhere.
Oh, no. I mean, you might sit in their office, like if you're there in person, or you just meet with them online.
You specifically though?
It was never a chaise lounge, even when I saw before we were married, even when I would talk to a therapist before. But one of the things that's really that I worked a lot on and still I think it worked actually for the most part. It comes up here and there, but it was about self-talk and negative self-talk. So negative self-talk. So self-talk period is just what you are telling yourself in your mind. So you don't really know what you're talking about.
They don't know what you're talking about. You're fine. Like that's an example of self-talk.
Yes. Whatever that conversation is that's happening internally, what you're telling yourself about yourself, because that frames your beliefs. It frames your thinking about whatever situation you're in, right?
So what I think I hear you saying, because we often hear, I don't say church people, but church people talk about your words have power. Life and death is in the power of your tongue. But if you're a person who doesn't subscribe to that, even outside of religion and whatever your beliefs are, self-talk is still a thing, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what is it that people say? It's like something about manifesting or like, what's the other thing? Like what you put out.
Like the
karma or like law of attraction kind of thing. And so it's like what's happening inside or what you're putting out even verbally impacts it frames your experience, which I think it to be true, right? So like if I'm about to go into a presentation and I'm like, I'm so nervous, like did I practice enough? Do I remember? Oh my gosh, I'm going through everything, and you get so much in your head, you almost can that over prepared or that extra nervousness and that lack of confidence, or you're gonna mess up, like you got to remember this or else you're gonna just like mess up, that kind of thing almost is like self-fulfilling because you're focused on it so much that it's like, all right, it's gonna happen.
And it's almost like you're training yourself how you want it to respond, right? Like if you're I don't know, if you're weightlifting or something, you're lifting something heavy and you just keep pushing through it, you're training your body that, hey, you need to get prepared to lift this kind of weight. Right. However, if you lift it or like you're like, this is too heavy, put it down, your body's like, oh, I have no need for that. So to go to your example, if you're about to go and do a speech and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget about this and what about this and what about that, you're almost premeditating and training your body that when this happens, freak out. And if it does happen, you freak out.
Right. As opposed to, okay, like I'm going into this, I'm going to do the best I can. If I stumble, I'll just get back on track. Like that's a more realistic perspective.
Yeah.
That will help you more than like, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up. Because the moment you mess up, because inevitably, just because we're human, things don't always go perfect. So if you mess up, then you're just like you're completely thrown off course, because you're like, you were so afraid of that moment, and now that it's happened, you're responding to it in the way, with all the anxiety and all the angst, with, I guess it's the same thing as anxiety, with all the, I'll just say anxiety, with all the anxiety that you had ahead of time, it's now showing up right there in the middle of your presentation.
Now listen to this, and I want to keep us on a track so it's easy for people to understand. Okay. But I don't feel like this is going to be that, because there's so much good stuff in here. Because when we talk about like the line down the middle of the table and how we address things differently, you go into a speech and you're like, I don't want to mess up, or if I do mess up, this is what I can do to overcome it. Yeah. Whereas when I'm preparing for a speech, it's and it's like a speech without notes or something like that. I need to practice this. So there's so many different ways and so many different tracks that there is no mess up. I'm just hopping from one track or one train of thought to the other. And I think that's really freeing for me, because there is no, oh my goodness, I messed up, the train derailed. It's, oh, that path was over there anyway. And so I almost think of a speech as a branch, like tree branches, where I start at the trunk and I'm going up, and based upon my train of thought, what I see in the audience and where my mind just goes, I want to have so many different branches to where even if I say something wrong or not in alignment with where I want it to go, I've already been down that branch before, so I know how to get to where I want to go.
That sounds exhausting to me.
You think so?
Yeah. So, because our brains are different, right? Yeah. So you're definitely more methodical and strategic in your approach to things. I am not. Okay. So to even give that level of thought, like it takes an enormous thought process just to prepare this speech, let alone to come up with all these contingencies.
See, to me, that's letting all the pressure off, because now I don't have to remember it word by word, which I'm never going to do.
No, for me, I guess, and I do want to say this, I've gotten a lot better. I think maybe that was my mindset at one point in time, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess up. But now I'm like, I'm just going to show up. Yeah. Because I have developed a level of confidence in just like who I am, where if I show up as myself, and like I'm a little quirky anyway, so like it's gonna be a little quirky. It's not gonna go perfect, because I'm not perfect, and I've accepted that. So that has been freeing for me to just show up. And also one thing I did in the speech training, which was amazing, like it was so good. Shout out to Speakeasy. I don't know if I can say that. There's no endorsement here, but they were so good. But that training was so I think life-changing for me in a way, because it focused less on the what is being said and more of who and what message who you are and what message are you trying to convey, and who you are in that moment. So like, what hat are you wearing right now, and in accordance to the audience that you're presenting in front of. So for example, if you're going to be, if your audience is customers, and you are doing a presentation and trying to sell $1 million deal or something, right? Then you come in and you may show up as, I don't know, maybe help me out. Like who would you say? Like I'm a boss, or I am.
It's like that persona you put
or
on.
CEO, or like you just come off as, you put on that attire, if you will, just like that frame of mind, like I am the boss of this and I know my stuff, like I am the top sales rep of not just the year but the century. And so you can put on that hat. Or if you are maybe if you're a teacher and your students may not be getting it, maybe you're less of a teacher at that particular point, maybe you're more of a coach, like you're encouraging them. So you have to figure out kind of what message you're trying to convey, what your audience needs, what message you want them to receive, and put that hat on. And that for me has been freeing, because I get that. I understand that.
But I think even above and beyond that, what you said was super powerful. You kind of blazed over it. It's the fact that you're enough. Like I think that's a statement in and of itself. You're enough. Like whether you're at work, whether you're at home, whether you're, showing up anywhere, you and who you are in your current state, as far away from your goals as you are, as much development and training as you think you need, you in this moment are enough for that moment. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't prepare, but confidence starts with recognizing who you've been created to be, who you are, who life has transformed you into is enough for you to be in this moment, in this opportunity. And the more quickly that you recognize and embody that is the better off you'll be in implementing everything else that we're talking about here today.
And I think I won't say I've mastered, but I think I have improved significantly in that area. So I don't mind presenting in front of people. In fact, I enjoy it. I think the areas where I struggle more are in, I think, living up to who people think I am, maybe that.
Okay.
And perhaps just also being able to speak of my accomplishments. Like I was telling my women's group the other day, I was like, I know I need to write up this award for my job. And I have a really hard time like tooting my own horn. I am very uncomfortable in that. Not to say that the work I do is not, I guess, award worthy, but it's just like, that just feels weird. And so I realized like I am really uncomfortable, really not confident in sharing my accomplishments because I think it can come off as like bragging or being like showy. I remember this word ostentatious. I like that word a lot. It means showy. It means,
I do not know what that word means.
I like that word. We learned it. It was like an SAT word back in high school, but I really like that word. It just sounds so smart.
I'm going to be throwing it in a random podcast now. So we're ostentatious in how we're doing these things.
It's
a very ostentatious thing to say there.
But it comes off. I think it can come off that way and I don't, in a weird way, I don't ever want to think too highly of myself.
You want to stay humble, of course.
I want to stay humble, and I don't want to be prideful, but at the same time, sometimes you gotta, at least in my job, you gotta get recognized.
Toot your own horn, beep your own beeper, all of that.
So you got any tips for me
on how to toot your own? Now I'm horrible. Well, actually, that's an interesting thing. So I'm horrible at receiving any type of praise, but I don't think I have an issue with commanding it or asking for it. What do you think about that? Is that a truthful statement? I know the first part is truthful about me not receiving any type of award or anything like that. But when it comes time, if I had to write up an award, I could write a darn good award about myself, I think.
Why is it? Why are those different?
I think when it comes to receiving the words of others, it requires me to take a moment and I guess receive what people are saying, and I don't do that well. I don't know why.
You give it out well.
But I don't receive it. I don't even say well. I just say don't. If you say something positive to me, I'll probably just ignore you and change the subject or something.
Why?
I don't know.
That's really interesting. Okay.
I don't think I've ever been good at receiving, like I want it. Like I certainly want to be acknowledged for my work. But if someone said, hey, you did a really good job, or I really appreciate you, I'll be like, oh, so how are the kids?
Is the sky still blue?
Yeah.
The weather, is it warm?
Like, I don't know why. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why it is, but it is. I can definitely agree with you on that. I don't know. I don't know why. It seems strange because you certainly do a lot of incredible work that I do think is worth recognition. And like you've excelled in you've excelled in your work. You've excelled in a lot of areas of your life, and I have no idea why. Maybe because it causes you to reflect, or maybe
I was thinking like maybe because it requires me to feel something, and I can't really control that.
Yeah.
Like I can control me speaking into someone else's life and perhaps how it makes them feel in some way, but I can't control how receiving that makes me feel.
Oh,
and I
that's
don't like that vulnerability, I think.
Oh, that is very interesting.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
I'm not crazy.
No, you're not crazy, but your uncomfortability with like the feels.
Yeah.
is always so interesting to me. And I feel a lot. So we're like the opposite. But yeah, and in the I guess the opposite way, I can receive compliments and recognition. It does kind of make me uncomfortable though, because I guess I don't like being the center of attention. And here we are on a podcast, but you know, I told y'all in the beginning, this was uncomfortable for me.
You're definitely the center of attention because everybody already knows I'm crazy.
They're like, but how is she though?
Right.
What's in her head?
Pick him?
Yeah, it was God's master plan, and I'm grateful. So yeah, that's. I don't know. I got an award recently, and I was like, oh wow, they thought of me. And as they were reading, I was like, it did cause reflection. It was like, oh wow, I have done a lot. It was interesting to hear it all said in like at one time
versus kind of just throwing little pieces out there.
And then I was like, oh, no wonder I'm just feel so crazy in my head. I'm over here, because I was literally doing all of these different things simultaneously at different points, and it made me realize, oh, that's the reason why I feel that way. Maybe I need to cut back on some things. Okay. But anyway, it was weird because it was like in front of like a pretty decent sized audience. And I was like, oh my gosh, the spotlight's on me. But I tried to be gracious and smile.
So there's probably someone out here who's doing something new for the first time. And they may feel feelings, to use that F word that we don't like. They may feel feelings of inadequacy and may feel feelings of discomfort. What tips or how could we help an individual find their confidence in that moment?
Yeah. So
one thing. Give me one thing.
One thing is that you are enough.
Ooh,
you said that.
Yeah, but it was good.
Yeah,
say it again.
You are enough. What does she say? One of my favorite people I follow on social media. She's like, you are enough as you are without change. You're enough as you are without change.
Yeah.
And when she said that, I saw her live, and I was like, whoa, that's like kind of a game changer, because I'm always like, oh, if I could just be a little bit like this, or I can be a little less like this, then I'll feel like I'm enough. Actually, nobody ever will feel exactly like they're enough, but in fact, you're enough.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because how many times do we hear or feel or receive that you're good enough, but with contingencies or with modifications or with qualifications? Like, you're great, but you can work on it. Like, what would happen if you just said, no, I'm going to be me?
Yeah.
Because I'm enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's number one, to get that inside of yourself, even if you have to fake it until you make it. If you have to wake up every morning and tell yourself you're enough, believe that you are enough. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Makes mine sound kind of shallow.
Well, and I feel like I need to give credit to the person who said it.
Who said it?
Her name is Melissa Frederick. She's Mrs. Kev on Stage.
Oh,
you know Kev on Stage?
Why didn't you just say that in the beginning?
Yeah, I should have said that. I've met Melissa once. She will probably never remember me, but she's amazing. I love her, watching her and seeing her do her thing, and her her husband, how they have what they're doing on social media is pretty cool. So
gotcha.
Anyway,
so that's number one.
That's number one.
You are enough.
You are enough. Do you have a tip that outside of that one?
I would say my recommendation would be to recognize that. Let me change that. What I was going to say is that you are the voice of reason in the room that you're in, but in some instances you may not be.
Yeah.
So I think that's a thing too. But the second thing for confidence is understanding where you are in your confidence meter or scale in this moment. And so what I mean by that is, we as we're preparing for something, planning for something, doing a job, whatever it is, there are ebbs and flows in our confidence.
Right.
And I think we have to recognize where we are in that and govern ourselves accordingly. A lot of times I think in error, we find ourselves in our most vulnerable state. And so we go talk to people who we probably have the least amount of faith in. And then we take our little candle of hope and dreams and everything and bring it in front of them. And we know mama never really supported us in anything, but we tell mama about our dreams and mama blows your little candle out. And so I think understanding where you are and then recognizing who you can share those things with, or maybe you don't share them with anyone. Maybe you just have to talk yourself up because maybe you really don't belong in that room. Maybe you're not enough. Maybe those things are true in the instance or the opportunity that got dropped into your lap. And maybe in this moment, I just have to tell myself that I'm good enough. Even if it's not true, even if no one else believes it, I got to tell myself this, and I'm going to protect this until I get to a point where I'm strong enough to stand on my own.
Yeah. And I would say maybe this is the third one, that authenticity is everything.
What do you mean?
And I think because like if you are chosen to stand in front of people of high rank and stature, you know, that maybe perhaps you've been given an opportunity to have an audience of people who maybe you've been had a chance to have an audience of people that are, you know, they're up there and you're feeling like I'm just not prepared for this. The thing is you were invited into the room for a reason.
Yeah, you have a purpose. You have a role.
You have a purpose. You have a role. There is something about you, a story about you, a situation that you've been through, some information that you have that's important for the room to know about. And even if you have practice and you get there and your notes are just like, I can't even see because I'm so nervous. Our son's in the room, guys. Even if you get to the place where you're so nervous that you can't even, everything's blurring. If you just speak from your heart and be truly authentic in that, I think the message will still convey, even if it comes out a little bit differently than you planned it to. And so I think authenticity it can take you further than even just like putting on a show.
No, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense to take that approach. You got a fourth one or just a three?
That's my third one.
Wait, no, it's my turn.
That was you were number 4.
Number 4. I think I would go with what you said about your self-talk.
Okay.
Encouraging yourself continually until you believe who you're encouraging yourself to be.
Fake it till you make it.
It sounds much better when I say it.
I was like, that's a lot of words to say.
Not fake it till you make it, but encourage yourself.
Like, so be authentic, fake. But then be fake. I'm just kidding.
It's like, hey, you know, negative words come up and no, I can do this. Or no, I will be prepared to do this. Even if you can't bring yourself to authentically say, I'm that guy. I will be that guy. I'm working towards being that guy. And until I'm that guy, then I'm going to still keep showing up to become that person. And I think that's a huge part of just because you feel unsure, just because you feel like you may not deserve to be in the room, just because you feel like someone else may be better equipped, doesn't mean that there's not a place for you in that room. And I think while you find yourself in that room, continuing to encourage yourself to say, no, I'm supposed to be here. Even when people naysay and speak against you, no, I'm supposed to be here. And truly believing that enough to say it with confidence and say it until you believe it, I think will be able to power you to where you want to go.
You know, I think that's a great point, and I get it. It's just aligning with who you're becoming. So even if you're not quite there yet, your actions now can begin to align with who you're becoming, who you want to become. And I think, you know, this the maybe the fifth thing, and it probably should have been the first thing, is remember who God sees you as, because throughout the Bible, God used a whole lot of people who would have been considered the least, like, no, that person. Why that person?
Paul said, I'm the chief sinner.
Yeah, but I'm thinking particularly about Moses. this guy, you know, he was out there, he was well educated and all that good stuff, but he had a stuttering problem. He had a really crazy past, and God chose him to do a particular thing for him. And Moses himself was like, are you sure? You know, like me, I stutter when I speak. And you want me to go stand before the Pharaoh, the king? Okay. Are you sure? Like, so, and even in that, God got so frustrated with him that he ended up sending him anyway, but he sent him with his brother to be the speaker, and Moses would be more like okay, I need you to go say this. Yeah. And then his brother Aaron would go and say the thing. But God, when he puts us in these situations, I think he doesn't put us in the situations because we're unprepared, or maybe because we're unprepared, because that gives him a chance to show like himself through us. So I think really thinking of who God sees you as, which is usable and valuable, and his child, and someone that he can do things through. If you can trust in him enough to fill in the gaps where you lack, then there's really nothing that can stop you. And I just need to remind myself of that. And I think that's how I've been enabled to do so many things, because me on my own, I don't know, not the best candidate, but you know, God is like, no, I can use you. And I just like, okay, God, you can use me, go for it. And then I surprise myself sometimes, and I'm like, oh, clearly that wasn't me. It was God.
So I want you to think about a few situations that you can recall where your confidence was either grown or your confidence was developed, which I guess is the same thing. And in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, I'll give 2 examples from my life that I think were really pivotal in me growing both real confidence and visual confidence, if you will. And so we'll start with visual confidence. Public speaking has become a very big part of my life, whether it's podcasts, whether it's recording videos, whether it's at the church and speaking there. Like, it's become a really big part of what I do. And I think one misconception that people have is that if you are a public speaker and you are decent at it, they believe that you don't get nervous when you go up there. And what I was taught from a really young age is that you don't necessarily stop getting nervous, but you train yourself so that your nervousness shows up perhaps in a less conspicuous way. And so growing up as a kid, we would have science fairs and speeches and things, you know, you'd read off scriptures in front of the church and stuff like that. And my mother would always prepare with me, and we would practice in the kitchen, and she would have me stand there and do whatever speech I would do. And she would actually watch for nervous tendencies, swaying or, you know, stuttering or putting your hands in your pocket or shifting your weight back and forth. And every time I did that, she would say, stop and start over. And what that created in me was, as I got older, my nervous tendencies were a lot less visible and a lot less normal, if that makes sense. So if you know me, usually if I start speaking or I'm in the very beginning part of a speech or whatever, I am blazing and moving super fast, because that's what I have turned into my nervous tendency. So much so that I have to remember every time I speak, quiet my heart, quiet my thoughts, slow down my pace, because that's my giveaway. But rocking back and forth and hands and saying a lot, those have pretty much been worked out of my vocabulary, at least as it pertains to speaking, when I believe that, or when I'm going to be in front of someone. So number one for me would be, you know, learning how to show up unnervous while you are still nervous, acknowledging I'm nervous, but deciding how that nervousness is going to show up, I think is going a really long way in creating a more polished way of speaking. And the second one I want to come up with, or the second one I want to bring to people's attention is, in technology, you have these certifications where it's like some test that you take in which the thing I love about the certification test is it's not different based upon your background or who you are. The test is the test. Can you pass it? 90, or I think 3 hours, 90 minutes, or 90 questions, and you just have to go through and can you pass it or can you fail it? And so I took this test, and it was, I think, my second or third certification, and this one was required for my internship I had at the time. I go in, I take the test, and I miss it by like 5 or 10 points. And I come outside, and my dad's there with me. He's like, so you failed it? And I was like, yeah. He's like, so what you gonna do? And it never crossed my mind that I had options in that moment. And I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? He was like, are you going to take it again now? Are you going to wait a while to take it again? Like, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I guess I should take it again. He said, you got some money. And I was like, I'm a kid at this point in time. I'm like, aren't you going to pay for it for him? When he said something that always stuck with me, he said, how can you expect anyone else to believe in you if you're not willing to believe in you? And so I think a lot of times when it comes to our confidence, we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for people to believe in us in an area where we haven't done the work to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're prepared or you have all these degrees. That just means that you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I am enough. And building yourself up to that moment will get you to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to pay for the test, take my little last $200 and go retake it again. And I passed it. But it all hinged upon the fact that in a lot of ways, how dare I ask someone for something that I'm not willing to give myself? Like that's a crazy idea when you think about it. So those are my two. What did you come up with?
Oh, okay.
You weren't even thinking, were you?
I was really trying to listen. I was like, he told me to think, but I'm like trying to be present and listen to what he has to say.
Think about your next question?
No, I will actually probably more times than not, but I really try to be present in these conversations. But one of if I have to choose something, probably more recently, about a year ago, I got a new position at my job. And of course, there's an interview that comes with getting a job. And oh my gosh, I was nervous, of course. It's an interview. But one of the things that helped me significantly was reviewing my resume. So I went back, I went back and I read my resume mainly because I knew they were going to ask me. So tell me a time about blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay.
Resume. This is, what is it? CV?
CV.
Like where it's super, super long.
Oh, mine's crazy long. Yeah. But it reminded me what?
Humble brag.
Well, it's just long. Anyway, there's a whole other story.
I got years in this.
I got years. I mean, seriously, I've been in the workforce for close to 15 years now, so I should have something on there.
52.
Not 52. Not quite. Not quite.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, so yes, reviewing my resume, CV, whatever you want to call it, but just like, what have I done? Mm-hmm. And I've spent a great deal of time in trying to put together like the language for it. And I was like, reading through, I was like, doggone it. There you go, girl. You better do something. You better have some history here. So, but anyway, that did help me to prepare. And that helped me to think of the scenarios because I mean, interview questions are typically pretty standard. Mm-hmm. You know what they're going to ask you, but
best and worst quality.
Tell me your best and worst quality. Tell me a situation where you were faced with a challenge and how you overcame it. And I was like, okay, so I think just kind of like looking at your record. So sometimes it requires some reflection. So whether it's your CV, your resume, or just like taking some time to think about like what you have done to help you recall the fact that you have been able to face challenges, you have been able to overcome situations where you were like, I have no idea how this is going to work out, but you're on the opposite end of that. So the reflection was really key for me to help me to remember what I've done and the qualities that I have within me and why I would make an outstanding employee and I'm most qualified for this position.
And for some people who are maybe going into a new area or a new situation where they feel like maybe their experience isn't all that applicable.
Yeah. I
think it just takes a step deeper to look to say, okay, maybe I'm not doing exactly what I was doing, but I bet you I can be a really kind person. I bet you I can be a really engaging person. I bet you my spirit of giving is going to show up in that particular realm.
Yeah. And that was actually interesting because you know this, but that was a kind of a shift for me. It was not the same type of position I had before. It was a different skill set, but had a lot of my skills were transferable, but I had to get a little creative about it. Mm-hmm. Like maybe I haven't done this particular thing in this particular way, but I have a way that I can apply some of the other things I've done to this situation, which would make me qualified for this job. And I mean, it was so cool. First of all, one of the people on the interview panel was like, I saw you did a training for me like a few weeks ago. I was in your class. And I was like, well, that was mind blowing. And I think that was just kind of God's way to be like, hey, you're good.
She walked
you
in
know
the
what
interview
you're.
was like, y'all heard about me.
No, I had no idea.
Been talking about me. Y'all heard
but
about
the
me.
streets were talking, and it worked in my favor. So, and that's another thing, like also putting your best foot forward in these different situations, because you don't know how they're going to turn out. And that has happened a few times where somebody saw you over here, but then you get remembered for a situation. Maybe it's a position, or maybe just an opportunity over here, because of how well you did there. So it's just like kind of carrying excellence with you. So I think, well, that's one. I am really struggling to figure out another. I
think the podcast, like, how did you get from to I'm going to do it?
Well, you reminded me that I'm enough. Yeah. You were like, babe, stop overthinking this. Yeah, you can pat yourself on the back. Stop overthinking this. You can talk. We can talk. It's just us. We're having a conversation. I was like, oh, okay, I can talk to you. I like talking to you. Yeah. So when I saw it as that, I felt a lot less pressure on myself to just like do it in some other way that I had built up in my head. I was like, oh, it's a conversation.
So sometimes just simplifying it and removing the pressure we put on ourselves and seeing it for what it actually really is can put all things into perspective and sometimes make you feel more equipped for it.
Absolutely. So, again, whether you're finding yourself in a room full of strangers or high-ranking people, or people you think are high-ranking or smarter than you, or whatever you think is happening, just remembering that they're people too. Yeah. And even in the basic levels, connection is key. At least for me, connection is key. And so if I'm talking to, whether I'm talking to my children or I'm talking to the president of the United States of America, like people, and it's about connection. So maybe that's another thing. I think I mentioned that with authenticity. Yeah, it's about connecting. Yeah.
Because that'll be one you definitely lead, because I'm not good at that.
I lean on that heavily. Yeah. Because I found that that's my superpower. That's the thing that helps me I'm most confident in that, because I think I do that well. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here for Conversations at the Well. My name is Vernon Brown.
And I'm Desireé Brown.
And above all things that we talked about here today, no matter what it is that you are trying to build up the confidence to do, to achieve, to run after, we hope that you will go forward and do it with confidence. We would like to go on this journey with you. So let us know if there's something that you're pursuing, something that you're going after, something that you're striving for. We would love to hear about how you're working through this path of confidence.
Like, comment, subscribe. We love to hear from you.
Just like we're hearing from our children right now. We'll see you next week.
We're going to go handle this. We'll see y'all next time.
For Conversations at the Well. Have a great time.
Bye-bye.